Soup Store! Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror stories. I don't know what I'm saying. Why am I saying in such a weird cadence? Welcome everybody to Tales Tomorrow. Imagine if I was doing like a YouTuber voice. Welcome everybody back to Tales Tomorrow. I'm doing some more RPG horror stories. Make sure to like and subscribe and ring for the bell. Ugh, that sounds disgusting. Anyway, let's tone down that energy. Let's increase the moodiness, and let's get some RPG horror stories for today. My personal horror as a GM assistant. A game master asked me to be his assistant for his group. I was thrilled because I'm reluctant to start my own group as I don't want to disappoint anyone. First session was cool, the group was nice, and game master explained Foundry and any other questions I came up with. Nice. Afterwards he asked me if I wanted to write a scene for the roleplay. I didn't know much about the system yet, but I tried my best and handed it in. He said it was okay and sent me the list of possibilities for dice checks. Okay, I did that too. It was okay again. Great, I never seemed to do anything wrong. I was happy then, but I didn't see the issue at this point. When I asked him to specify what would come up next session, he said I should be spontaneous. Something he always said, whether I asked to coordinate with him because I want to know what to play, which information are vital to hand out, and which I should never let slip before. It was his game and I wanted to not ruin it. I thought, okay, he is busy, I need to prove my worth. So I keep up reading with what he wrote in Foundry, trying to make notes of all the NPCs of him because I don't know which part I should play. I asked questions, but the answers got less and less. I started to feel like I'm too dumb for this, that I asked wrong questions or too stupid ones. Try to be in his game shop often to look over his shoulder when I did Foundry things. I really want to be helpful and useful. Before we even played my scene, he asked me to write a whole adventure and provide me with books. And when he said he would set up the dice checks but not correct the adventure, it was the first time I dropped out of my cozy happiness heaven. But he wouldn't ask me to be his assistant just to have less stress, right? Dude, it sounds like he's just making you do all the grunt work. Write me an adventure, write me a scene, write me a whole campaign, write me an entire 7-year story for the players to play through. Are you just writing the campaign for them or something? Are they training to be a DM? I went to the session where I was supposed to debut as a storyteller for the group. I was so nervous. I read a lot about the world and the systems, worked in a whole small plot to involve everyone and give them time for character development. I also tried to hint at the possible adventure. I might be an inexperienced GM, but I can write such scenes. As the GM never gave feedback, I checked in with friends to make sure I was able to include everyone on the group of players for this scene. What happened really demotivated me a lot, and I still don't know if I was the horrible assistant DM who did everything wrong or if the group was bad, but it was a horror for me. Well, I guided the group to the place I needed them to be. They discussed not going at all. Off-topic discussion, and they knew it was my first time narrating the game. Even after the role perception to determine whether the voices came from, I'm assuming maybe you kind of were never taught about the fact that railroad is a thing, and some campaigns are going to have a little bit of railroad, light railroad, but also the campaigns where the railroad can be very obvious, and it can be a little bit jarring for players. They can be like, well, what if we don't go there? And of course, yeah, it's like, oh no, I had the whole session planned out. What if the players don't go there? I mean, I guess you could just be like, well, maybe if you don't go there, I guess you just not going there and you're not going to be following the plot, and we can probably just end the session here because I have this thing planned out for this session. If you're not going to participate with it, like if you're not just going to be ignored for the sake of ignoring it because THXD guys, what if you just ignored it then? I mean, I can't force you to adventure, but I have the whole thing prepared. If you want to play it, please do, but if you don't want to, I guess I'll just pack up my stuff and go. I feel like your DM kind of throwing you into the wolves basically without giving you any sort of like pointers about it, making you write stuff and do the system jamming, when in fact I feel like you're just doing a lot of the grunt work instead of assisting. There's a difference between assisting and writing a whole ass adventure. Like, what are they helping you to do? What are they trying to teach you to do? Are they trying to teach you to be like a storyteller, the DM and stuff? Are they trying to put you in that DM hot seat to see how you will do, or what? Even after the role perception to determine where the voices came from, who was screaming and all that, they scolded me for telling them what they saw when they moved in that direction. Everything sounded like they wanted to know what was happening, and if it was too fast, the tone was really harsh. They could have just said they stopped walking and walked away. I wish they would have done that. While engaged with the player, the others talked, wrote on WhatsApp, and created ChatGPT pictures of the NPCs I was playing. The game master always asked me in the middle of my sentences if he could show his AI pictures he had made. I told him before I didn't want to use them, and he said that it was fine. He never describes appearance. I do that, and he said before he understands that. One player asked me off time if my character was dumb or if she was acting like that. The gaze I got as a person also looked like, are you dumb? It was so uncomfortable. The GM, who was browsing the internet while I talked, suddenly threw in NPCs who framed my NPC as bad guys. The group started to accuse them too. I tried to turn the table because NPCs weren't bad guys, had no effect anymore. The GM also reversed some of what I said, like my characters were lying, even though all the information was given to him before, and he could have easily instructed me to tell it differently to fit what he wanted. I didn't want to ruin what he's planned. That's why I tried to talk to him so often before. It sounds like the GM wanted just to run a thing or run a session, but also it's like too many cooks in one kitchen, or basically like too many people trying to steer things in a specific direction. The GM in the situation that you're learning from is not helping you at all with the session, but instead of butting in and kind of interjecting instead of assisting and supporting and helping out where, let's say for example, you would need a fumble. And I feel like that's a horrible thing to do. If you're gonna help somebody become like a better DM or whatever, or at least learn how to DM, you want to take them through the steps of how, let's say for example, how Foundry works, how it works, how to set up initiative, how to change scenes, how to set up walls and stuff for players to be able to see things or not, how to turn on lights and change from day to nighttime and stuff, the technical aspects, as well as how to put together a map through various tools, whether you use Photoshop or Incarnate, or just Google some maps that you found that you think, oh, that's kind of cool, I'll use that, to then running the combat, running the NPC lore, showing how you can come up with lore on the spot, helping with improv and stuff, giving different pointers and notes. But then afterwards, if let's say for example you're observing your training DM or GM whatever in there, and if they need some help, if they ask for help, offer them the help instead of just doing whatever the GM is doing here. It seems like you have one thing prepared, but instead you have GM that basically is distracted, generating a bunch of AI images for no reason, even though you didn't ask them for it, and just interjecting whatever you've already wrote. Too many people are handling too many things in the kitchen instead of just letting you cook, and I feel like this is a massive problem in this situation. The group left the store that night without saying anything, despite laughing about the AI pictures. GM later said the best part was when I played dialogues with him, and that I fit the table perfectly. By the way, the scenes we played together were such a mess. For example, he played a 2-year-old child a character was supposed to babysit, and I was playing the mother who gave the hero the task to babysit the child, or a merchant, where he loudly told me that I should follow what he wrote. I did, by the way, I did. He just spoke mid-sentence, so I was never able to fully play out my role. The play felt like the theater at elementary school. One player actually reached out to me saying that I needed to learn to engage with NPCs. The way they wrote it clearly aimed for me to tell him, "Oh no, you did so wonderful. You're a marvelous player, so talented." My group where I play as a player told me that this was the wrong table for me and I should quit the assistant job immediately. Thanks for reading. Need to get this off my chest. Reading this while I typed this made me so angry that I would definitely quit this job, and I'm not sure if I ever want to be a pen and paper GM ever again if this can happen. I actually know somebody that specifically became a GM's assistant or a DM's assistant, and let me tell you, it is, from what I experienced, does not seem to be a thankful job whatsoever. It's a very thankless job where basically all your actions and all your efforts are basically never credited, never utilized, and unfortunately, I don't know, maybe there's some other assistant GM jobs out there, jobs specifically, I don't know, but in my experience watching somebody be an assistant for a DM, man, it is a troublingly sad observation to experience. Like, just from my perspective, watching somebody go through that, it does not seem fun or enjoyable. In fact, it was actually extremely stressful because instead of learning or helping somebody run a session, you instead have an entire weight of the campaign be put on you, and if you don't do well, everything else can fall apart. But in this situation, I would say quit this job. This job is not worth it. If you want to learn how to DM, learn from somebody who wants to teach you how to DM, or run your own sessions, learn on your own with a group of players that is perfectly fine, knowing that you're learning and you're going through, and just have that hands-on experience instead of this job. This job is just not worth it. Quit the assistant DMing job. Nobody ever, please, just do yourself a favor. Don't take up the assistant DMing job for yourselves. Please, just don't do that. Learn DMing from friends that want to teach you and stuff. Learn from videos and stuff. Don't make D&D assistant your job or something, because just don't. Just don't. It's a miserable experience. 3-year campaign, One Piece, ruined by narcissistic player. Hello RPG community, this is a non-fictional story of how a homebrewed 3-year campaign was destroyed by a selfish narcissistic player. No real names will be mentioned in this to protect identification, but I've been wanting to share this story for over 5 years. For those ready to read some cringe, grab a snack and drink, this one is a bumpy ride. To understand the story completely, we need to start at the beginning, almost 2 years before the One Piece campaign. Don't worry, we'll skip most of the 2 years. My good friend at the time, Patrick, got me hooked on One Piece, and all the fun adventures the Straw Hats had. Patrick had recently introduced me to D&D 5e, Despite my hesitation to original play, I had a blast. I heard of One Piece before, but where's the 2-piece or the 3-piece? Is that 4-piece? Is that 5-piece? Is that like a chicken nugget menu? Is that just a 1-piece chicken nugget? I'm giving it a 10-piece chicken nugget. Sorry, just a dumb joke. Let's continue. Experiencing D&D with this group in an RPG, sharing out the box ideas, the collaboration with players, the excitement of getting a nat 20, or the horrors of a nat 1 were all small things that drew me deeper and deeper into the game. Couple years later, with some good experience now under my belt, I pitched the idea to Patrick of hosting a D&D One Piece game. He was exasperating at the idea of a D&D world, but at the time we were poor college students, barely able to afford rent, food, and the basics, let alone going out to buy these expensive D&D books, online, in person, or otherwise. This led me to design a homebrew campaign for One Piece. Planning, structuring, and developing took 6 months of my personal time, with advance taking time and there from Patrick. We include all the details: races, classes, spells, the devil fruit, trade system, ship tiers, and much more. I created original characters and unique content. It decided to start with a story post-Luffy after Straw Hat's retirement. I gave a prototype book to Patrick to look over, and with joyful tears in his eyes, he smiled and told me the book was ready for the game. Now, our D&D group was well established at this point. I had invited 3 of my good friends, the first one being Chris, a smartass. However, he is a great RPG player who's communicated well. The second is Gabe, a silent but humorous man who's smart as he is strong. Weston was a third friend, who was great at thinking outside the box. Patrick was the one who brought me into the group. His 2 main friends who played were Bruce, a quiet and humble man with brilliant ideas, and the other being our topic, Quinn. Quinn started off as one of those guys. Before the One Piece campaign when he played, Quinn was the guy who knew all the rules, how to break them, and call people out when they messed up. At first, Quinn would be gentle on showing you how he knew all the rules, but after a few months you could easily tell that he would manipulate rules to bend in his favor, especially as you get to know the game better. I feel like maybe that might be false, and maybe Quinn is just one of those guys, I use create to destroy water inside of your lungs, you drown now, which I feel like is kind of a really dumb interpretation of the rules. Most people that say that they know the rules and find ways to break it are people that typically misinterpret the explanations or the mechanics, or interpret it in specifically malicious way to try to get some sort of advantage. Sorry, I'm scratching my beard, but my hands aren't physically moving, so that's why you see me doing this. And yes, I have a beard. I know this face is clean, but behind this face, behind the headset, there's a big luscious, well, not big luscious beard, but it's still a beard. Once investigating a rule that he might have been caught fibbing on, Quinn would panic and then re-explain the rule accurately before he could find it covering his actions. At the time in the story, I didn't mind. After all, it's just a game and people want to win the game. Sure, he was technically cheating, but he was small and the group could shrug it off and still enjoy the game. The only way to win D&D is by playing together, not actually winning D&D. The winning conditions is literally like just playing together, fighting the stuff cooperatively together, and playing at the table, telling a fun story together. Not just, oh, I found a way to stupidly interpret create to destroy water into your lungs and stuff. That's not winning D&D. That's just being an a-hole at that point. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of this story, the beginning of the end. Remember how I said Patrick was the one who got me into D&D and One Piece? Well, Patrick was an expert in all things One Piece. He did, after all, give the green light once he read the book. This was a man who owned all the manga from start to finish, along with all the One Piece sessions. Quinn did not want to do a homebrew One Piece, seeming as incomplete, irregular, unofficial, and empty. Everyone else in the group who read the book disagreed with Quinn and thought it would be fun, fresh idea to have a sea-based pirate adventure. Being outvoted, Quinn folded with some grace, but he appeared to almost pout as I helped everyone make their characters. Lydia told me that while he did trust me to be a good DM, he was worried that my inexperience would ruin the fun of a proper adventure and that I would make up rules along the way. Honestly, I understood his concern and promised him that I would not make any rules without the group's consent. After all, my One Piece D&D book was and still a prototype and had potential for improvement. Patrick and Chris came to my aid, insisting to give me a chance as a DM. Again, Quinn folded and we began character creation. Patrick decided to play a fishfolk mantis shrimp martial artist, Chris as human engineer with the acid fruit, Weston as a human bard escape artist with the leopard fruit, Bruce as a Skytopian doctor, Gabe as a human chemist with the open fruit, and lastly Quinn chose a human sharpshooter. To be completely honest, at this point in time, everyone including Quinn was actually getting excited to play this version. After our first session, the entire table unanimously agreed that it was worth the wait. As a new DM, I was over the moon and spent nearly all of my free time fleshing out characters, islands, plots, and encounters. For the first 2 months, about 4 to 6 gatherings worth, the group was in love with the game, and they completed their first island and sailed off on a tier 1 ship as ambitious yet morally correct pirate group, trying to live in the legacy of Luffy. Quinn admitted surprise by my fortitude with DMing, and it was nice to hear him say, "Okay, you got me." This was a huge compliment, as it always seemed impossible to impress Quinn with anything. After the first island, however, I could tell that something was off with him during the first island. I spoke with Quinn one-on-one to see if my instincts were correct, and they were. He admitted that he hated his choice in class and subclass, that he would continue with One Piece. I might just leave and come back for another D&D game. Of course, I want my players to have an enjoyable and refreshing experience while playing, so during one of our sessions, I gave him an opportunity to change roles and classes, which he took. However, this was the first honest mistake that I made that started the descent into madness. You see, Quinn in all the other D&D games we played, he got the sense that he wanted to be the big stick in the party. Turns out he figured out a loophole in my fighting class that he could use with his subclass for massively overpowered combos. Ah, I see. He wants to be the best of the best in the party, trying to be better than everybody else in the party. He wants to be the best of the best. Once I figured this out, which took a few sessions to realize what he was doing, I called a meeting to discuss the overpowered perk. Again, the group agreed to change the rules to rebalance the fight to class, and Quinn was furious. He actually started to yell for the first time, saying things such as, "We are out to make the game less fun," and that we are punishing him for following the rules. This started to cause a small divide. On one hand, Quinn was correct. We were suppressing the loophole he found. We actually felt bad about it. But on the other hand, the party was talking with me separately on how annoying it was that Quinn could one-hit everything. Eventually, it came down to me to change the rule or not, and I did. With Quinn now nerfed of his broken ability, but still lethal AF, he again pouted, claiming, "What's the point in playing this class if I can't even use it as intended?" Chris argued that if a video game makes a mistake, then make a patch for it, right? Quinn retorted with, "D&D is not a game," loud enough to make your ears ring. And yet you're trying to play it like a video game basically because you like the exploit that you have, and suddenly the exploit that you have is not going to be working and you actually have to play the game itself. D&D is in general is a game, and yes, your DM has the ability to patch some sort of a exploit specifically that I already found. If everybody in the group finds a problem, maybe it is a problem. Maybe the fact that you enjoy this super powerful exploit means maybe probably should be a little bit unbalanced. I don't know, man. I don't want to play somebody that's like overpowered and stuff, and if let's say, I don't know, I'm playing a class or subclass that's like really powerful, I might even consider like, man, maybe that's kind of overpowered. We should probably rebalance it and kind of rethink about it. Like, I'm not the kind of person that wants to play somebody that's completely busted. I want to play somebody that's balanced and something that would be fun to play and to utilize the mechanics to the fullest. In this situation, Quinn is just extremely unhappy with the fact that he can't exploit a pretty powerful exploit, and the rest of the party is like, "Hey, I'm not cool with it." But Quinn is like, "You're taking my fun away. D&D is not a game. It's a place for me to be overpowered and do whatever I want." Quinn, it's just fair for everybody else. Come on, man. Stop being such a sourpuss about it. This was an awkward position for me as I was desperately trying to please all parties. As the session went along, game by game, Quinn was noticeably trying to steal the reign from the other party members. Quinn would interject as much as possible whenever possible, and in some cases ruin other people's ideas to make his own prosper. One good example of this is when Chris was interrogating a hostile pirate hostage for information on a devil fruit. The party failed to extract the information in no roll chance. However, the group decided to hold the prisoner hostage, continuously planning future interrogation roll chances that could potentially lead to the location of the devil fruit. It's a sound plan, but not for Quinn. Quinn then says to me, "I'd like to roll attack to decapitate the prisoner." This shocked the crew, as the whole ideology was freedom fighting. For those who need a context, a devil fruit gives the player untold powers at the cost of losing the ability to swim. Additionally, even a bad devil fruit can sell for several million. Everyone in the party knew that, and this was the first lead on the first devil fruit. As a DM who hates saying no to my players, giving them full open world choice, so I let him roll. He then decapitated their hostage and told the group, "Now the whole world will know if you don't talk, you will die." Who would know? Who would know? Is it, do you have somebody observing you specifically that you're just doing that? You literally are in the middle of the, probably in the middle of the ocean, on a boat with a single prisoner, and for miles around just probably water. What, you're gonna have dolphins? A dolphin's gonna be a message just saying, "Oh yeah, if you mess with those guys, you're definitely gonna end up dying." I can't make a dolphin noise. My throat is sore. Quinn is kind of an idiot. I'm gonna be honest. Quinn is kind of an idiot in this situation. Like, they're just like, yeah, so they're gonna have to know between us. But who would know? There's nobody who would know. This is a stupid move. Quinn is just being an idiot for the sake of being an idiot. They're probably just salty because they don't get to get away with an exploit. To me, as a DM, I didn't really care too much. This wasn't my story after all. It was my player's story, but the party did not respond well to the actions Quinn took upon himself. Bruce shouted, "What the hell, Quinn?" Everyone agreed to keep him alive. Quinn replied with a smile, "Too bad, so sad." Ugh, Quinn, I hate this kind of person. They're like, everything that I do is just me. I'm gonna do whatever I want. And if you don't like it, too bad, so sad. A selfish player. A selfish player that probably should be playing a single player game instead of playing with other people because they don't know how to play well with others. They just care about their own selfish needs and desires, and they'll throw a temper tantrum and crash out, as the modern people like to say, well, at every single inconvenience possible. This caused a further separation, and Quinn acted as if nothing had ever happened despite the repeat from the group. This action was a huge loss to their in-game reputation. Quinn later told me in text that the real reason he did it was to get a higher bounty than the other members. I knew this insinuated more than what was broadcasted. It truly felt like he was trying to take over as a main character. This is where I personally started to truly see the narcissist in Quinn and told him that it was rude to go behind the group in decision making. And then pulled the classic, "It's what my character would do." If this is really what your character would do, how about you consider making a better character and not some sort of a selfish, self-pompous a-hole? Seriously. The ultimately only few moments sometimes where it's what my character would do that would be justified. Let's say, for example, you have a decision. Do we run away from the village that's currently on fire to get to the next quest, or we try to help them and potentially risk our own lives and stuff? If, let's say, for example, you decide my character would not run away from a fight, my character would help the village nearby because that's what my character stands for. It's what my character would do. In this situation, I feel like that's fully justified. But if your justification of it's what my character would do to do some sort of a jerk, selfish maneuver, then no, make a better character. Don't make an a-hole of a character. It's one thing to have a character that's like, it's what my character would do in a situation that matters in context. But if you're just trying to be a selfish a-hole and it's like, this is what my character would do, so I'm going to justify it with that because I want to be a selfish a-hole of a player, then that's not okay. This was the first time I ever heard this excuse, and it really bothered me because it was a sign that he would override the decision-making process again. I told him politely that if he did that again, I would overrule it. Quinn replied with, "Oh, I knew you were going to turn into a bad DM," and left for that day. After a long break and a few months, everyone cooled off and agreed to resume. The break seemed to have worked, but Quinn would not stop talking politics at the time. One of my rules was no politics at the table, as politics can destroy real-world friendships, and I didn't want any political dogma to ruin the game or experience. Turns out, I was right. Quinn ignored my rule, and whenever I would take a break or leave the table, he would talk politics with the party, which over time grew troublesome as Quinn had to be right in terms of politics. After catching him in the act, after hearing raised voices, I finally had enough and told Quinn, "If you can't follow the rules, I don't want you over here to play." Quinn laughed it off and said, "Just messing around, it isn't that serious, take a chill pill." We continued the game, but nobody was having fun. The game literally turned into, what does Quinn want instead of what do we want? This caused players to leave one by one until there was nobody left. The game lasted for almost 3 years, and honestly, a good chunk of it was fun. I only wish I knew how to handle a narcissist before going into that first DM experience. An important lesson for you to experience this sort of thing, and in the future, maybe a little bit of word of advice from a stupid tiefling on the internet. I'm just a dumb little tiefling, a dumb little idiot. But if you're dealing with a narcissist, stopping them in their tracks and saying you will not tolerate this behavior or else they're out is probably the best thing to do. Regardless if you're dealing with a narcissist, a Mary Sue, a Gary Stu, a sex pest, problem player is going to be a problem player. And if they're not going to stop being a problem player, you need to remove the problem player from their game and make sure you let them know to the problem player of your boundaries, what things will not be tolerated at the table. And if the actions persist and morale doesn't improve, you remove the problem player. That's how you can make the morale improve. That's how you can make the rest of the players happy. Instead of making the entire game be so Quinn-centric, you could just specifically go to not having Quinn at the table and let the rest of the players actually have a good time and have fun. Instead of having an unfortunate situation where a bunch of players just end up leaving because you just never end up kicking Quinn out of the game. Unfortunately, I wish players would have asked you to consider kicking Quinn and kind of help you with his decision making, but ultimately, as the arbiter of the game, as the DM, it'll be your decision of if somebody is removed from the game. Something to know for the future, I suppose. Unfortunate that it happened, an important lesson to learn, but problem players should probably be removed if they're not going to change their behavior. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.